I'm Rosalind Carita, and this is History and Heritage. And I am at Fort Defiance, and here it is right here. Did you know that there were more than just one actual forts in Clarksville? Today we're going to look a little bit at this map. We're also going to look a little bit more at the inside of the Interpretive Center and see what life was like in Clarksville during the Civil War. So stay with us. It's your history and your heritage.
Hi, I'm Major Jim Lawrence with the Salvation Army here at the Salvation Army Family Store, and we could really use your help in donations of
coats and warm clothes.
And anything that you give to us will help those that are less fortunate in our community. And also, if you come in and volunteer at the thrift store or the family store, it would be great because you could separate clothes that goes to those that are less fortunate in our community. Thank you very much for what you're doing in our community.
At Salvation Army.
I was explaining that there was more than one fort here, but I'm not exactly sure where they are. I need you, William Parker, who is over this whole interpretive center. I need your help. Interpret for us.
I will do that for you. Of course, you did mention Fort Defiance.
Right.
We are here. There was another fort most people have no idea existed right across the Red River called Fort Clark. And when I say right across the Red River, some of the people my age and older will remember the old Two Rivers Mall. That's where this fort sat.
Okay, right at Two Rivers Mall.
That's correct.
Was there anything, were there earthworks? Was it as big as Fort Defiance?
It was roughly the same size. There were earthworks. It was apparently poorly located. It was a marshy area there at one time.
Okay.
And Grant, when he arrived here, even ordered the fort destroyed as soon as they arrived.
So it was destroyed during the Civil War.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. And whatever artifacts would have been there, of course,
are gone. And so we have also Fort Terry. Now, where is Fort Terry and what was its?
Terry is at the end of College Street, Wilma Rudolph Boulevard, where they run together.
Okay.
It was there to protect the railroad trestle that went across.
Okay, of course.
Right.
And so what happened there?
Most of it, there was not, of course, a battle fought there either. Most of that fort is gone now. There's a rock quarry back here, took out a lot of the fort, but it was there. I recently found a period map that actually shows the fort on there. It's the only evidence besides writing I've ever found of that fort, but it shows the fort being there.
That is amazing. Of course, it was to protect the railroad. Well, we see the forts, we kind of have an idea where they were located, but at the Interpretive Center, you have what I really like about showing different aspects of Clarksville. And here we have, in this same room, all these big hogsheads. Tell us what, you're showing us about the tobacco in Clarksville that's always been kind of a part of us.
This is so important to our interpretation here. Even though a war was going on, people were still trying to make a living, okay? Tobacco was king in Clarksville. That was their cash crop. Of course, they grew other foods, but that was to feed their family. This is what they made their money off of. A lot of people don't realize Clarksville was the #1 tobacco export city in the entire United States.
That is, I think that we cover that sometimes, but it really brings it home when you say the #1 in the United States. And so in this display, we see different parts of raising tobacco, I guess would be the best way to say it. So tell us a little bit more about, and I see you have here the money crop.
That's right.
That's what it was.
How they made their money.
So even during the Civil War, and we see going to market, so they brought these down to the river, and that's how they shipped them.
That's right.
Okay.
Trice's Landing, Trice Landing. There was also Red River Landing down here at the bottom of the hill. and they would have been packed in these hogsheads.
Yeah,
these
I know
big
you like that
barrels.
word.
I do. I love saying that word. It would have been packed in those and loaded up on their river boats.
Okay, and
carried
taken
away.
to New Orleans?
New Orleans, Nashville,
Okay.
other cities where this big tobacco companies would have purchased this.
Okay. And then another part of the interpretive center, you know, we've talked about Clarksville's role, but we also know that the Civil War lasted a lot longer than anybody thought it was going to, and there were a lot of other important happenings. So we wanted to kind of take a look at sort of the hall that you've put together that shows other parts of the Civil War. So let's go take a look at those.
Okay.
So what we have here is you've kind of made a street, like a street scene, so that we could, again, get a feel. And you've done such a good job of, as you say, interpreting. I know you told me that you have lots of folks comment on this, that they don't know what that is. Tell us a little bit about what we're looking at.
This young lady here would have been taking the oath of allegiance.
Okay.
Okay, from a Confederate back to the United States. She's obviously defiant.
Okay,
So-
so she is the Confederate. She
She's the
could have been a
Confederate.
Clarksvillian.
Most likely so.
Okay.
That's right. And of course, she when she was taking the oath, she crossed her fingers and put it behind her back.
Uh-huh. So that was King's X. We all know that.
That was, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But the loyalty oath, on a kind of a more serious note, once Clarksville became occupied, the people in the city had to promise that they would not fight, that they would not try to take the city back. I mean, isn't that kind of they had to promise to be good while the Union soldiers were there, and in return, the Union soldiers wouldn't just annihilate them.
Yes,
Is that pretty much the...
That's correct. And of course, this went on through the war, and after the war ended, the Confederates
That's
were
right.
required to take a loyalty oath. Some of them never did and didn't receive a pension. Yeah.
Wow. And so these actual artifacts here, this is the actual loyalty
That's
oath.
one signed.
Okay, and it was signed in 1865.
65, late war.
Okay,
Right.
and then you pointed out Nanny Haskins.
Here's another picture of Nanny
Right.
Haskins with her family.
So we again see her as a very normal, regular person. She wasn't a soldier. She was essentially a child.
She was a
or
teenager.
a young woman.
Teenager
yeah.
in that picture.
And so she is the person, we have her diary and really get to know her family and the hardships of war. I love this King's X. As we move down here, I just caught sight of Andrew Johnson, who
Tennessean.
of course was a Tennessean who later became president.
Right.
And then we have daily life. So tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here in this daily life. I see a military pass.
Yes.
So you had to have a pass to be able to travel?
To get in and out of town, you had to present a pass to prove you weren't a spy.
Okay, and so that kind of goes hand in hand with the loyalty oath. And then daily life, we actually see some pictures. Okay, the Porter children. Tell us a little bit about these pictures.
These were, remember we talked about the female academy
Yes.
earlier? These were some people here, children obviously, that died of disease.
Oh.
And it goes, this just shows no matter how wealthy you were still susceptible to these diseases. It could hit anybody.
And so this was the measles epidemic of 1864.
64, right.
And they both died.
And they're buried over here in Riverview Cemetery.
Well, that brings home the reality of the times, and not only were there bullets and knives and all those kinds of hardships, but also the diseases that took a lot of innocent folks.
About 3/4 of the soldiers that died in the Civil War died of disease.
Amazing number. And then we turn the corner, literally, and we see starting a new life. So tell us what we have here.
This site here at Fort Defiance, during the war, it became a magnet for runaway slaves. They could come up here, they could seek refuge. Of course, it was Union occupied.
Right.
And the Union Army took these slaves in, they referred to them as contraband, and they actually worked on the fort. They shored up the defenses, A lot of the women worked as seamstresses for the officers. And once again, they're free now, so they're starting a new life.
Right.
And that's what our interpretation is. And of course, in 1863, Thank you. Emancipation Proclamation was signed.
Right, and so that the slaves were officially freed. I didn't realize that when you said that Clarksville was a magnet for runaway slaves, and weren't there African Americans who were trained as Union soldiers here in Clarksville or Guthrie or someplace very close?
Here in Clarksville alone, over 2,000 of these recently freed slaves enlisted in the Union Army.
That is
including the 16th United States Colored Troops. That was a regiment that was raised here.
the 16th,
Right.
okay. And so, as you say, starting a new life, and we begin to see some changes. And this is what you talked about this being a magnet for the runaway slaves. And we can see desperately trying to start
Yes,
a new life.
that's correct. And literally, it was a new life.
It was a new life.
Right.
It was a life. And here are these pictures. Now, these are actual pictures. These are not an artist's rendition. These are actual folks.
And they're wearing Union uniforms, so most of them are probably veterans of the Union Army. They're wearing Union greatcoats
Right.
in the picture.
And then we go a little further here and we see one man's story. And again, when we talk about the Interpretive Center, we don't just talk about history in the broad sense, like from 1861 to 1865. We really concentrate on the individual and how they impact. And so you've done such a nice job with this. I mean, one man's story, Andrew Jackson Kendrick, born a slave in 1836, fought in the Battle of Nashville, returned home to New Providence, attended school, and made his living teaching.
Right here.
How great.
Yes, right here.
It kind of makes me so sad. And here is a picture that really is so impactful. These are not reenactors. This is a whole wall of African American soldiers who probably had been slaves and joined the Union Army. And this was not taken here. This was in Virginia. But these are real soldiers. We do have reenactors who also have, as you mentioned, the 16th. We have reenactors from the 16th, and I've met some of those fellas. And we also have reenactors that were up here 2 weeks ago and did a great job of setting up camp and made everybody really realize what it was like. And we had the opportunity to talk with some of those reenactors.
We had 2 companies of infantry. We had the 4th Kentucky and the 19th Alabama.
Okay. So these reenactors, was that the first time that they've come up here?
It's the second time we've had them. Opening weekend we had them, but this was the first time since April.
And this time they shot the cannon.
That's correct, every 2 hours, and that's a crowd favorite.
I'm sure. Now, do we have the cannon here all the time now?
It is. You come up and see it. It's a 6-pound field gun, and it's here on display.
Okay. And while we were up here, I know that we saw so many folks in their uniforms, and it was amazing to me. Not only did they look the part, but they stayed in character. And we got to observe a doctor doing an exam, and as he did the exam, you could hear him say, have you ever had tuberculosis, and can you walk okay? And the guys that he would talk to really stayed in character, you know, and they said things like, well, my mama had tuberculosis, or my mama had consumption, but I don't cough, or my feet are okay, I can walk, and I farm. And then the doctor would say, okay, you're fine, and then they went over to a table, and how did they sign them in? Do you remember the oath or something?
Well, they had to actually enlist in the Army.
Okay, and they did that.
That's right. They enlisted in the Army, and a lot of them couldn't sign their name, and they would simply put an X in the box. and that was sufficient for them to enlist in the Army.
And then didn't they do something else after they enlisted them? It seems like I remember seeing folks marching, and what else were they doing?
They were paid there also. They were given their bounty, $50, which was a lot of money in 1861.
Okay.
The average pay of a soldier back then, a private, was $11 a month. So $50 would have been a lot.
So for enlisting, you got $50.
A little bounty, that's right.
A bounty, all right, okay. So while the reenactors were here, they got paid, and then what did they do?
Of course, they had to learn to march. And they lined them up and issued them muskets. If they didn't have muskets, they gave them tobacco sticks to use instead. And they lined them up and they taught them how to do left face, right face, shoulder, arms.
And we saw some of that.
They did that display for us.
And then I know that some of the guys, I saw them talking and visiting with each other, and they did stay in character. They talked about their family, and what kind of things did you hear them talking about?
They talked about the bad food, which of course soldiers would have talked about in 1861. They were issued bland, plain rations, and there were no cooks in the Army back then. They had to make their own food, and they did. They cooked over an open fire. And they basically complained about the same things that soldiers complain about today. Yeah.
Well, that was an adventure to see them. And it wasn't just soldiers. There also were some women there who, I saw them around the cannon. What would the women have been doing?
Especially here in Clarksville, we had Camp Boone. And at Camp Boone, it was so close to home, a lot of the women would bring extra food, extra clothing to their husbands, to their sons, and they would have been a common sight in the camp, women walking around.
Okay.
And of course, while the men were gone during the war, once they had left, the women were the ones that
kept the home fires burning.
Thank you, kept the home fires burning. That's right. I almost said held down the fort, but yeah, kept the home fires burning.
Right. I'm standing here with Tracy Jackson, and today we are actually up at Fort Defiance. There's lots of people here. We're just going to take you down a street. Tracy serves on the commission. Now, Tracy, tell us a little bit about the commission.
Well, it's a commission of people from the city and the county put together to help commemorate the Civil War, the 150th sesquicentennial of the Civil War. And I'm serving on the subcommittee of tours and working with the commission, with the bureau, the visitors, and so we're working with them to try to encourage more visitors to Clarksville to view what we have here. And this is one of our little jewels, Fort Defiance, and it's now set up for a demonstration of how things looked during the Civil War this weekend.
And we really have, this is very interactive. You can see there's a lot of people here, and we're just going to walk down this street and let you take a look and listen to Tracy kind of tell us what we have here.
Yeah, this particular arrangement of tents is called a company street normally, and this is not that many, there aren't that many tents there. We're usually 100 men in a company, and so we would have probably 25 to 50 tents depending on how many were available. You see inside the tents here a lot of the equipment and weapons that were used during the war, and these are in good shape. These are muskets, and they're all very similar, and they have knapsacks and haversacks, and they have their cartridge boxes and their powder boxes. The weapons were loaded from the muzzle, and that's why they were called muzzle loaders. And so they had to carry bullets in one container and caps, they called them, in another, and powder in another container, and it was a rather lengthy process to learn how to do that. But each man learned to load his rifle, I think, 3 times within a minute, and that was the sort of the standard for being able to become a good soldier and fire your weapon rapidly enough to be in battle.
And that was quite a feat, because like you said, there was nothing easy about doing this.
No, it was not.
And so we have row after row of tent, and they would have slept here, obviously.
Yes,
a little bit of straw
here.
on the bottom.
Here. And they ate here, and we'll see a mess tent down here at the end. You see straw on the ground. That was a luxury almost, if you could find straw to put on the ground. They would use branches from trees or other things. They sometimes had oilcloths to put on the ground to keep from getting wet from the ground. It was terrible trying to sleep in these conditions with, we don't have air mattresses or anything else in those days.
Yeah.
But they did have oilcloths and waterproof things, and they would lay those on the ground sometimes, or if they could find straw, they would use that.
Right.
It was quite primitive living in this condition.
No
so,
kidding.
Yep.
And I see we have a reenactor up here that is doing a little interpretation.
Yeah, let's listen to him.
Let's go up here and see what he's talking about.
We're actually in the fort. What you see over here would have been what they call a bomb-proof. It would actually had timbers across the top of it, so when shells came in, they could get in the timber so they wouldn't get hit. So that's pretty much why. And then outside the fort, you'll see like a trench on the other side of this hill, and that was to make it harder for people attacking the fort to come up the trench. You could sit over there and shoot them before they got up there. So that's kind of what they would do. Because this is a static camp, it's a little different. But what you do is that would have been the captain's tent down here, and then you'd had a fire pit, and then you'd had the sergeants and corporals and going on down. And then what they would have done is way over here, they would have had what they call the sink. And what the sink is what we call the toilet today. They would have dug a trench, and that's what they would have used as their bathroom facilities, and they'd have tried to keep it away from the fresh water if they could. And so that's what, if you think about, of course, each regiment would have had 100 plus men. So you think 100 plus men, there's 2 men to a tent, there would have been probably 50 tents. And then, and then our muskets are in here. We're getting mustered in right now. And so what they're going to do is later they're going to march us, and then they're going to issue us our uniforms and our weapons and stuff. See, I've been signed in. I actually got paid.
You do?
$50. That's more money than I've ever had in my whole life.
All right. And so you've been signed in.
Mm-hmm.
You signed up today. You
Yes,
got
ma'am.
your $50.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
What we have here are metal stakes that were used if they had them, to drive them in the ground above the fire and hang meat on them or other things that they were trying to cook. And this is a brass, or I think it's brass, a water container, and another one there. That's a typical container of the period. And they were, at that point in 1860, they were pretty handy with, all of these things were handmade, of course, and they were pretty handy with making stuff that way. Now, we didn't mention before, these tents look small, but often there were at least 4 people sleeping there in a spoon. Like they said, like you mentioned earlier, spooning, and so you could, in these 10 tents, you could get 40 or 50 people sleeping in that many tents. And so it was really crowded, but that's the way they did things in those days. The men cooked their own food mostly. They didn't. Sometimes they had cooks during the wintertime, and some cooks followed organizations. I know there were a couple of cooks in the 14th Tennessee that went to Virginia with the organization, and they helped cook. And they had a seamstress, and they had a laundress and all that that went along with them when they went to Virginia from Clarksville.
We need to get you in uniform here. You put you some bars on your shoulder.
Too old.
Oh, never too old. Listen, never too old. Look good in a general's uniform. But
Well,
you're
I
going
could
with
do
the
that.
right color.
Yeah, I know. I
Confederacy.
wore my color
Yes.
this morning.
So you're
But
right.
this is butternut, and that's
This is butter. This is jean wool.
yeah,
And
they call that butternut.
yeah.
and
And until you get them broke in, they're real rough. But this even has the stems of the cotton in it.
So we are now in the film room, and this is a separate private room where you can seat, 25 people maybe?
About 30.
Oh, really?
Right.
And you have a really good film, 16-minute film.
Right.
Tell us a little bit about it.
We're excited about our movie. It was locally filmed, edited, produced, all of it done right here in Clarksville. Very professionally done. It was shown on PBS last week, and several people have come here just to see the movie again.
Great.
Yeah, it is that
and
good.
This film actually gives everything that we've been talking about. I mean, it kind of condenses it. It says,
Sums it all
here's
up.
what happened, this is what it looked like, who were the people who here, these are the people that lived here, these are the clothes they wore.
Right.
I mean, it really makes it so easy that if you wanted to sit down and watch this, you could put it all together in 16 minutes.
That's right. And the names that we have mentioned thus far as we've been going through, you're going to hear them again in the movie,
Right.
and it's going to make sense to you, and
Right.
it all comes together with the movie.
It does all come together. I mean, Nanny Haskins
Yes.
and Colonel Woodward,
That's right.
our favorite Irishman.
Yep, you mentioned in there too.
Yeah. So this is another really distinct part of the Interpretive Center that I think is a great addition and brings it all together. There's no other way to say it. And one of the other pieces that we have here is what some people call a gift shop and some people call it educational center. And I wanted you to take us and show us that because you have some nice items that I think would make great souvenirs, great memorabilia. So let's go take a look at those.
Let's do it.
Okay. So right here is what you call the educational center.
It's an educational resource center.
Okay, educational resource center. I love this. And of course, when you walk in here, there is no view like this anywhere else in Clarksville. This is magnificent. But then you have great stuff in here. Authentic Civil War mini ball.
That's correct. And I wrote a little interpretation on the back there to explain the name. A lot of people think it got its name because it's small. Mini, no, it was the man that invented it.
And he was a Frenchman.
He was a Frenchman, that's correct.
And Mini was his name.
Minier.
Minier.
But
Okay.
in
But of
America,
course
we call it
America,
Mini.
we call it Mini.
Right.
I love it. You see, that's wonderful to know that it wasn't a mini ball, it was a Minier. Is that right?
Minier. And
Minier ball.
I want to add this. Why I decided to put these bullets in here, when I was 6, 8 years old, my family took me to Vicksburg, Mississippi. I was bored the whole time. They bought me a mini ball that was for sale there, and that's what started me liking the Civil War.
How great.
And
I mean, that
hoping
is,
it would do it to some other
yes,
young child.
and I'm sure this will. You have great stuff. Goose quill pen, bamboo flute, and lots of books.
Our best sellers are the cookbooks. It amazed me how many people love cookbooks.
Well, I think that that's such a great Christmas gift, or, you know, that's just a fun thing to have. And we have Skirmish at the Irish Shanty, Wildflowers, great books. I mean, this really is an educational resource
Local.
center.
We try to keep all of our books from a local theme or local authors.
This is great. And you have some Confederate money that you've got sitting out here on the desk. And I wanted to share that with our folks that are watching because I think this is the most clever idea. Let's take a look at that money. So what we have here are some $100 bills, Confederate money. And I thought this was so clever because what you have on the back. Tell us about this.
This is a good little recruiting tool here. So many people have been coming in here asking, they've been seeing the reenactors and said, you know, I want to do this. How do I get involved? Well, we have a local group called Porter's Battery. They're an artillery unit. And they brought in these Confederate $100 bills, very educational to see that. Well, when you flip them over, it's got their contact information. So somebody can take a bill and then contact the unit here itself.
Okay, so if you were interested in being a reenactor after having seen the footage that we have about the reenactors, this is a way that you would contact them, and it's www.portersbattery.com. So that's a great way to get people involved.
It's very clever, wonderful.
And this is the main room for the Interpretive Center. And you have volunteers that come and help and take school kids through, and you have folks to help you plan the schedule. This is a wonderful experience. And William, thank you so much for sharing this with us.
Well, thank you, Ms. Garita. It was a pleasure having you here, and come back and see us again sometime.
Well, we will. It is our history and our heritage, and you've done a wonderful job of teaching people about Fort Defiance.
Thank you.
Tell us again, no charge,
It's all free.
and when are you open?
We're open 7 days a week. We are getting ready to start our winter hours. We will be open from 10 to 4.
10 to 4.
Normally we're open to 5.
Okay.
But we're going to start our winter hours, and on Sunday we'll be 1 to 4.
Okay, so 7 days a week,
Right.
10 to 4, Sunday 1 to 4.
That's
And
right.
we'll put up a phone number on the screen so people can call and come out here.
Come on out and see us.
That's right. Come on out. It's your history and your heritage.